Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 25th, 2023 West End Opportunity Partnership Board Meeting. Wanted to make sure that we welcome our newest representative of the Commonwealth, Deputy Secretary of Justice and Public Safety, Mr. Michael L. Jackson. Keith, sorry.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Keith L. Jackson, sorry.
Ain't gonna have, baby.
Michael in the house.
Hey. Welcome. And now we'll have our roll call.
Okay, I'm gonna put my glasses on here. All right, we have some people on virtual. All right, Sharon Allen. J. Michael Brown.
Present.
Alicia Burns. Dr. Douglas Craddock.
Present.
Gina Dunlap.
Present.
Jennifer Hancock.
Present.
Jennifer Hancock. Okay. Tammy Hawkins. Keith L. Jackson. Jessica Jackson. I think that, no, that might be Chip. I know Jessica's probably getting on. Darlene Johnson Jones. Dr. Gabriel Jones Jr. Dr. Mary Milliner.
Here.
Michael Nagel.
Present.
Lyndon E. Pryor. Christopher Romaine.
Right.
Desmond Smith Jr. William Summers V.
Here.
Dr. Don Wade.
Present.
Gary Williams. Secretary Jeff Noel.
Here.
Jeff O'Brien.
Here.
And Chip, I know you're you're on the call, so but I have him on here to sign up. I got him for virtual.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
All right. So next on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes. I know that the minutes were distributed previously from the August meeting. Are there any points of discussion or corrections from the meeting?
I'd like to approve the minutes from August 28th.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion carried.
Motion carried. And now for our interim president. Interim president CEO report from Laura Douglas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Milliner, and good afternoon, everyone. We are going to have a jam-packed meeting today. Your various committees have been hard at work, and they have some important reports that they're going to put before you this afternoon. The Board Development Committee is going to ask you to remove from the table a matter that was discussed at the last board meeting. And then we're going to have a chance to review it. Again, it has to do with board appointments. The Community Engagement Committee has a very exciting report. They're going to outline for you our process for doing neighborhood intake to get the ideas, opinions, and suggestions from the 9 neighborhood members. They have been working on a process with Dr. Rollins, and I anticipate that a hunk of our meeting today is going to be devoted to reviewing that and make a decision about what we would like to do. The financial consultant report will consist in part of an update on a meeting that we took to Frankfurt. Rita and Chip and I went to Frankfurt a week ago or so, and we're here to tell you that the support we had in Frankfurt is still consistent and still very high. They're really interested in noting our progress, and they have given us some really critical information about when we might expect to receive our first installment per the statute. The Chip is going to go through that with you. And there's a new business item towards the end of the meeting that Jeff Knoll is going to go over for everyone, just as a matter of information. So thanks to all of the committees for the hard work you have been doing. And let's kind of stay focused today, because we have a lot of decisions that we have to make. Thank you.
All right. And now to our committee updates. First, we'll have the chair, Jennifer Hancock, for the board development.
Thank you, Dr. Milliner, and good afternoon, everyone. I apologize again, I'm traveling and can't be there in person. I would like to make a motion to move a matter regarding the selection process from the table.
Is there a second? There's a second on that motion.
Yeah, I'll second it, have
Okay. Second. Okay, all in favor? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer, sorry.
So since our last board meeting, we have engaged our general counsel, Amy.
Oh, sorry, we need to vote.
Yeah, he gave, J. Michael did the second. I don't know if you heard him on the
So
motion.
did a second. So
Mhm.
all those in favor of the
Mhm.
motion to remove the matter from the table that we discussed at the last meeting concerning board appointments, please say yes.
it.
Aye.
Is there anyone who's opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, Jennifer.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, we have engaged our general counsel, Amy Cubbage, and I believe I saw Amy come into the room. Is that correct? Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
And I want to begin by thanking our board members who so thoughtfully gave us feedback at the last meeting, and to Michael for making the motion to table this matter. I think it was the right thing to do, to leave that last meeting and to seek some additional clarification. We have done that. In addition to the clarification, we have provided in writing an opinion along with an update to the bylaw, as well as the written motion. And I heard loud and clear, I think we all did, a desire to see all of that in writing for tonight's discussion. Amy, if you would be so kind to talk about the opinion that you prepared after consulting with the Frankfurt attorney, David Fleener, that would be helpful. And then we'll take it from there.
And Amy, given that, I don't know if you're going to hear me better from that standpoint or from that position.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm sorry those of you who are remote don't have this in front of you, but what Rita is handing out is a memorandum that I prepared based on the question that we got at the last board meeting in regard to the Board Development Committee's recommendation, which was that the board seats listed under KRS 65-503 1F be 1F subpart 1 be required to provide at least 2 nominees for the board to vet and then nominate and approve. And then I got the question, well, could we apply that to all of the board seats? And at the time, I hadn't thought about the question in those terms. We had only thought about, did we have the authority to apply it to just that specific subset? So in going back, looking at the structure of the statute, our statutory interpretation rules in Kentucky, as well as some discussions with some of the drafters of the bill itself and what was intended, I don't believe that the best interpretation of the statute is that we can apply it to anything other than the seats under 1F1. There's a distinction made in the statute between the seats for the governor, the mayor, Metro Council, U of L, and Simmons were automatic appointments that once the governor, the mayor, whomever made the appointment, they were automatically on the board. Whereas all of them under F1, A through G required approval by the governor. So the belief was among the drafters that even with the board's authority under subpart 4, that's the part of the statute that says the board will self-perpetuate after the initial appointments, that we have to honor that distinction in subpart 1, so that it was believed that we cannot impose that limitation on the governor, the mayor, the legislative council. So it's up to this board to decide how you want to move forward. So I believe you still have the authority for the other seats to require them to submit nominees, and then the board finally pass on who sits on the board, but that you don't really have that authority for the governor, the mayor, the legislative council, U of L, and Simmons College. And I'm happy to answer any questions you want.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't here the last week, the last board y'all. Who's that lead?
The seats that we would ask for nominees, or at least the board development committee's proposal that we would ask for nominees, would be the members from the seat for the NAACP, the seat from One West, the seat for the Urban League, the Federal Reserve seat, which I know we're going to have to address separately because they refused the seat, the Volunteers of America seat, and the seat from a foundation with assets over $1 million, and the seat from a bank with assets over $1 billion. And the proposal essentially would be to treat it like we did the neighborhood seats, where members of the neighborhood could apply, and then the board committee vetted it, and then the board made the decision of who would be appointed. It would be applying that same general kind of system for that subset of board seats. Did you do the bylaw? Pass that.
Yes. The other issue at the last meeting, Jennifer, I believe, was some board members wanted to see what a bylaw change would look like to effectuate what the committee was recommending. So Amy has done a bylaw amendment so that you can see that as well.
Is there more than one set? Is there more than one set?
I'm sure it's better than to involve them in the
Oh, you're right. Yes, okay.
And what this does is just simply puts what I said into a kind of bylaw form where there are vacancies. I've got the different categories set out. We've got the categories in subparts 1A through E. That's the governor, the mayor, all of those, that they will simply be accepted. Subpart B of this bylaw amendment lists the institutions where there is a named institution, not where there's the foundation or a bank with certain assets. So for the NAACP seat, the One West, all of those seats, it with an identified constituency, it sets forth that we'll ask that group for 2 nominees. Then the part in subpart C are the banks, the foundations. It gives the board the authority to decide who they're going to solicit names from. And then it would go through that same process where they would be asked to give 2 names. And then the 9 neighborhoods are in D, and then it takes us back to the original section for how the neighborhood board members were selected. At the bottom is simply an amendment that just clarifies that any seat, if there's a resignation going forward, will be filled. Just, if there's an unexpired term, that it will be filled in the same way as an expired term. That we'll just go through this process, no matter if it's an expired term or a resident.
Then the amendment proposed for section 6
Mhm.
there's language that is, supposed to be struck, that explicitly states, I guess, the continuity of representation. Are we saying then that we can cross over neighborhoods and representatives?
No, that's really just cleanup. That is because it's already in the statute, so and it's in other places in the bylaws, so we just didn't need it multiple places. I was just trying to do some cleanup. If I were starting over and like rewriting the bylaws, there's a lot of cleanup I would do. That's solely cleanup. So we still have to require the age, somebody from each neighborhood. That's all still binding on us. It's just cleaning that up here. But that's a good question, because I don't want anyone to think we're trying to get out of that here. That's in the statute. We're bound by that.
Can you just say again, what was the first part of your question? What were you commenting?
In the bylaws amendment, the section, amendment to section 3.6,
Okay.
there's language that were removed, and Amy was just clarified only because it's redundant.
Yeah, the part at the very end
Okay.
where it's all struck through about, like, if the neighborhood rep resigns, someone from that neighborhood has to be appointed for that. Yeah, we're not trying to change that with this at all. And I'm of course here if there are more questions, this discussion unfolds.
So the motion that came out of the board development committee is to request a minimum of 2 nominees from institutions reflected in KRS 65.503 subpart 1F for consideration of board membership as such seats become vacant or if a term expires.
That is the motion. Do I have a second?
Wait, I
Who
have a
don't?
question,
Oh,
because I know sometimes we have problem filling spots. What do we do, like the 2 candidates that they get, we have 2 more? No, we have, like Bell Reserve.
That's a great
Okay.
question. We have the authority to vote candidates down and send back to the institution the decision of the board development committee. And theoretically, they would then need to provide us 2 additional candidates. Or 1 additional candidate if they've already met the minimum of 2.
Yes, the way the bylaw is drafted, that if the first 2 list fails, you go back as many times as you need and ask for one next. You don't take away their seat unless they affirmatively refuse the seat.
That's kind of rough. So can they do that?
They could, just like Federal Reserve, and that's handled under a different part of our statute. But the intent is to honor that seat, so it's not like if the board turns down 2, they forfeited, like that, let's say 1 West would have forfeited their right to a board member and the board can go somewhere else. They simply keep going through the process. Hopefully we wouldn't need to do that, but it's written to allow that group to still send more lines.
So there was a motion, we need a second still.
No, because the motion is coming from the committee. That motion came from the standing.
We just need a vote.
Yes.
all in favor of the board development committee requesting a minimum of 2 nominees from the institution reflected by KRS 65-503 subpart 1F for consideration of board membership as such seats become vacant or if a term expires. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Oh, no,
Do you want me to roll call vote?
please.
Sorry, I still have some board members trying to get on with the link. So I was trying to get that. Okay. Okay, roll call. On the vote. Board Development, Sharon Allen. J. Michael Brown. Alicia Burns. Dr. Douglas Craddock. Gina Dunlap.
Abstain.
Jennifer Hancock.
Aye.
Tammy Hawkins. Keith L. Jackson. Jessica Jackson. Jessica. Darlene Johnson Jones. Dr. Gabriel Jones. Dr. Mary Milliner.
Aye.
Mike Nagel.
Nay.
Lyndon Pryor. Christopher Romaine.
Nay.
Christopher Romaine.
Nay.
Desmond Smith. William Summers. Dr. Don Wade. Gary Williams. Jessica Jackson. Going once? All right, we have 9 yes. Oh, Lyndon, he just walked in. He didn't know the whole group, yeah. Okay, and we have 1, 2, 2 noes and 1 abstention.
Two.
Huh?
Two, Lyndon, he's abstaining.
We have a Christopher Romaine and we have Mike Nagel as a no. What are you saying, Linda?
2 abstentions.
Abstain.
Oh, okay. So 2 abstentions. The ayes have it.
Jessica's back.
Jessica, there you are. We were taking a roll call vote on the motion.
She put hers in the chat.
Oh, she did? Oh, gotcha. Got it. Okay. All right. So we have 10. Yes. Okay. All right. 10, 2, and 2.
So we have 2 immediate seats that this will now apply to, and that's Republic Bank and NAACP. We will reach out and communicate that to those 2 institutions. We will also develop the criteria by which we will use as a guideline to determine who we will nominate to the board. And the goal is for us to reconvene as the board development committee within the next 30 days. At such time, we've had an opportunity to properly communicate to those institutions and to give them a window of time to provide us a minimum of 2 candidates. Happy to take any questions about the process or the next steps from here.
Well, comment or request. In our board development committee meeting, I had suggested that we have a list of all the current members along with an acknowledgement of their terms, whether when they started or expired, because we have so many sort of randomized expiration dates. So I'm wondering if there are plans to provide that just for general reference.
Yes. She has a face right there. Would everybody like to comment here?
This list shows everyone's expiration date.
One of those little, one of those little things they put on the fingers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you so very much. I
If
appreciate
you
it.
will email it to those of you on the screen. Did I give you one, J. Michael?
No,
So that brings us to the
just.
communications committee, Dr. Wade.
Ms. Rita, do you have to pull up what I sent you earlier?
Mm-hmm. Think I can do that here.
Right. I think at last month's meeting, I showed you all the proposals that had come in for the website development. And there was a request to add an additional proposal. And so, you know, our team did our due diligence and reviewed the proposal that came in. It came in from an organization locally here in Louisville called Honeywick. If Ms. Rita shares it, I can walk through. I'll go back just in case a few people weren't here last time. If you start on slide 2. Please. So far we've received 4 proposals. I walked you all through the 3 proposals last month, and we have an additional 4th one for this month. But I added some notes, and I've asked that Ms. Rita share this out with you all as well as links to the proposals. But we had Red 7E, Mammoth Creative Group, Raj, and Honeywick. And what I've done on each line, I just put different items in terms of what I like, what we didn't like per se, additional information. And I won't read through all of these. I'll kind of talk to the Honeywick. From the proposal that they submitted, I felt that the price was fair and reasonable based off of what was in the RFP, and that we should consider adding some copywriting to their proposal because that's not something that we asked for, but it may be needed as the website grows. And that will be based by the hour, not necessarily by the project, and that they have the capacity to add form fields to the site where needed. So as we've been talking about getting, new forms filled when there are vacancies and things like that, those things can be hosted within the website so that we're not having to just send out a bunch of links or like PDFs or asking people to fill them out. So they do have the capacity to add on, whereas it's not something that we asked for. And I'm sure some of the other ones can as well, but that was something that they brought up within the proposal. But I also asked that they would provide some more examples of their nonprofit work, as well as their rate to source photography. I know we've talked with some of the assets that our team has developed before. We've not necessarily chosen to use imagery from the West End just because of how political this subject has been. So to not create issues, we have looked at potentially sourcing, and that doesn't mean that it has to source from outside of Louisville, but we should be very considerate of who we source and any kind of imagery pertaining to the community. But they also included hosting. Their hosting rate is $450 per month, but within that hosting rate, if there are any bugs that come up, if some of like the widgets change or require some back-end support, they'll do that free of charge. They won't charge you for that. So I think that's why their hosting rate is a little bit higher per month than some of the other ones. Their timelines are a little bit shorter than some of the others, so that's definitely a good thing. And then their pricing comes in very mid amongst the Mammoth Creative Group and Raj. I still think that Red 7E was overpriced, but a lot of that had to do with some of the assets they were asking to do. And I would think that if you all wanted to consider them, we would ask them to reconvene on their pricing. And I think that the price would actually come down if they were to be considered. So in looking at that, I still applied the merit criteria that we discussed last time on the next slide, where we're looking at costs, whether it's minority owned, where there was a Louisville affiliation, whether there's a West End affiliation, timing, nonprofit experience, as well as portfolio expertise. And then on the final slide is where everybody falls. Honeywick has the maximum that you can get is a score of 5 across these different criteria. Honeywick comes in at 3.9, whereas the Mammoth Group comes in at 3.8. Mammoth Group is in the West End, so that's where it is to me, it's competitive. They are not, however, minority owned, but if we wanted to go back and ask for additional information in terms of more of their composition, I think that we should, but I think that they're very competitive, our top 3 being, or our top 2, Mammoth and Honeywick. If we want to consider Red 7E, I would just go back and ask that they modify it. Not asking for a vote today just because we didn't get this proposal in until the last minute.
Mhm.
But we do, Ms. Rita will distribute information if you all want to review the proposals and review our feedback.
Yeah.
Any
And you-
questions?
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, anyone, I can actually share it to the entire board, but if there's specific people who want it, then I can do it that way as well, just in case everybody may not necessarily want it. Or want to have access.
Any questions?
Does,
As you mentioned, that Honeywood is, they do their own hosting. For all of these, what type of service do they provide in terms of technical support, so sites are down, those types of things that they?
They all provide it to some degree, and usually their rates are gonna be between $85 an hour and $150. With the hosting support that Honeywood provides, they maintain all of that, but all of them pretty much do maintain that because it's an always on aspect, they do. But if there are like security upgrades that need to be done, they do that. Honeywick, they will, within their hosting support, they'll give you 5 hours of support a month. So for example, if you needed, something uploaded to the site, or there were certain things you want to add it, you kind of get that 5 hours within that $450 per month. So all of them to some, if you click back on to, you see like the hosting kind of varies 300, 350, 450. So it's all kind of favorable, but some of them, they will kind of hit you with a charge. It's very case dependent on what the issue may be. Any other questions? I think just to be fair, we should not vote today. If you want to take a chance, take some time to look at it, I think we can then make a decision, next month, next board meeting.
But just let me know, anybody who wants me, I'll share the link. Chris, okay. Lyndon, okay. Chris and Lyndon, anybody else? Okay.
Mike as well.
Did I hear a soft voice?
Mike Nagel has.
Oh, let me take this off the screen. I was like, who? Sorry.
Or maybe he wants to be called on.
Mike, do you want a copy? I mean, you want me to share it?
I also had I think my question was answered, but does the support included in the hosting include redesign work or additions?
So after the development of it, you'll go through a Q&A phase where if there are issues or things not working properly, or there are things you want shifted, you tend to get about 4 weeks support of that. Anything outside of that will tend to require incremental fees. With the Honeywood one that they proposed, they said that you'll get 5 hours of support per month. So if there are changes that you're asking to make, they can make those changes. Of the other ones, they did not proactively, give that information. But if that's something we'd like to ask them to include in their hosting, we can always go back and ask for that.
I just wanted clarification. If we want to go back and ask that, that's fine as well.
Me to go first.
Next.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wade, for that information. And now we will move on to community engagement. Dr. Gabe Jones Jr.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
don't forget that.
Chip has a meeting at 5:30 that
Oh.
he's driving to.
So
And I
we're gonna,
forgot, so he's
yeah,
got
so we're gonna,
10 minutes.
let's get
If we can go ahead and get him.
Okay. so
see
a minute. All right, so the financials, sorry, y'all.
If everybody did look at, you get the balance sheet, the income statement. That we can look at.
Yeah, he's
On
on,
that now.
he's on the phone. Chip?
Chip, you can go ahead and kind of give us a summary of what you want to talk about as far as the meeting and the budget that you.
Yep. Thank you, William. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Could you speak up a little bit, Chip?
What I'll do is I'll take out those air.
Yes. He's driving like in eastern Kentucky.
That's probably better right there, isn't it?
Yeah,
All right, good. Thank you, William, Dr. Milner, for moving me up. And President Douglas mentioned at the front end of the meeting that the great meeting we had with Department of Revenue. One of the partners in this whole operation is the Department of Revenue, and one of the key things that we needed to get great clarity on is the timing of the TIF payments, and it's just property tax sales tax and withholding. And what was really impressive about the meeting from the start was that they had the commissioner there, their counsel, they had the heads of sales tax and property there, Tom Crawford property, and Richard Hobson with sales and so forth. They shared the complexity of the project. Property tax, it's 13 square miles. Sales tax, there's 1,800 accounts that they have to review. The withholding, there's 1,000, and of the 1,000 reporting withholdings, 200 of them are multi-site, so they get their returns in January. It was really fascinating to learn, that what the Department of Revenue, what the work they have to do to provide the information. Therefore, it's one of the great explanations for why, it's not till this fall, probably October, November-ish, that we have an idea what that base looks like. That's their estimate. Again, it's 13 square miles. There's a lot of information to pull together for the property tax TIF and the sales and withholding. They do a lot of back checking once they get the numbers. They do a lot of back checking and make sure that businesses are still open and who's reporting and that kind of thing. So what we'll have at the end of, hopefully at the end of October or November, around that time frame, we'll have an estimate of what the 2022 base looks like. And then similarly, it'll be this time that time next year that they'll have what the 2023 tax year looks like. So that's when we'll have an idea of what the estimate is. I mean, what mentioned to the board several months ago when I being here. So that is where the TIF is. I think that I'm just trying to think off the top of my head some of the other things that were really helpful about that. Laura, Rita, am I leaving something off on that meeting that you think I should mention?
No, I don't think so. Let's hold for a minute to make sure everyone picked up on what you were saying. He is literally saying that the 2022 base amount will not be known until October or November of this year. And that we will not have our first payment under the financial arrangement until October of 2024.
Well, we won't have our first measurement of how much that be until that period. Yeah, we get a check after that at that point.
October 2024 is when we will know what the calculation amount is of the first amount you'll receive. But that's not the date that the payment will be made. It's the date when the amount will be known. Is it all come in one lump sum or does it come in escalation of the payment?
What'll
Lump sum.
go ahead? I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't chip, based upon how they did it with the Arena Authority, once they let us know what it is, we will get it all in one lump sum.
we'll get 3 separate checks for each of the
That's
property
right.
taxes. Okay, 3 separate
Exactly.
checks.
What's the timing?
That varies.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I mean, once they give us the what they expect it to be, I mean, they may tell you when you expect to pay them, but I mean, that varies. That's why it's very important to keep the relationship with them. And that's why going up there and making sure that we have these meetings and we have that relationship, I think that helps us get our money, as quickly as possible.
what this
It's
also tells us is one of the things that we have been, constantly asking is, when will we know, what the base amount is? Because we haven't had any information that indicated to us when we would know that. And now we do know it's going to be October or November of this year when we'll know what the base amount. But it will be next October before we know the amount of our first payment.
The actual
That's-
tax.
So that's important for us for planning purpose. That's very important.
Is there some type of kind of like broad spectrum of expectation of what's to come? Versus like no insights or at least some broad expectation of what that number may be?
No, there's not. I mean, if you're asking what, is there any way to approximate or guess what that number might be? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the question.
No, ma'am. And, that there is not. There's, like I said, with, the property, you've got 13 square miles of property, and that property is more straightforward. The sales and holding sales taxes, you've got, what did I say, 1,800. There's 180,000 counts in Metro, and then there's 1,800 that are assigned to that 13 square miles. And there's a whole process to go through to figure out who's still in business and who's not. It's and then when you get to the withholding taxes, it's even more complicated because you might have, for example, might have 10 branches in Louisville and in Southern Indiana, and one of them or two of them might be in one of the 9 neighborhoods. Well, when they file their withholdings, they do a filing for all of their branches, if you will, and the Department of Revenue has to contact them and suss out of their joint filing how much of it's attributable to the employees they have in the. So it's just not possible. We just have to wait and let Department of Revenue do its work. But they are committed to it, and I think that's the main. That's one of the main points that I wanted to communicate about the meeting is that having the commissioner there and the executive director Gary Morris, and then all of his chief staff members there. There's a real commitment to the Department of Revenue. They understand the importance of it, and it has their utmost commitment to getting that number as fast, as accurately as possible. And so that's one thing I wanted to communicate. The second thing was that I need just to plant this seed for the board members to remind them that, the base year you get paid on increment, and the base gets adjusted for inflation every year. So just keep that in mind, that while you might have year over year of growth in property tax or withholdings or sales, for example, it does get, the base year gets adjusted for inflation. So there's no way to calculate or what impact that may have on the partnership right now, but it's just important that I wanted to go ahead and plant that seed with the board, that's going to be part. I think that's going to cause a lot of questions down the road when we figure out, how much the partnership's receiving. But again, a great meeting with Department of Revenue and the stakeholders there.
This timeline is typical. The arena was not quite as complicated, and some even in Northern Kentucky we worked on. It's not as complicated. It takes a while because of all the various puts and takes, and so this is actually, I think, moving faster than I actually was going to think when I realized the scale of everything involved. So,
Well, again, I think that goes to the necessity for us to have the relationship with the department and going up there meeting, like I said, that will help us very much.
Can I ask, forgive me if this is redundant, but why didn't we ask for like 20 or 21? What it would have been in those years to get us a random baseline?
No, it just can't, they can't work that way because, you know, they have to, I can't remember the number of parcels of land. I wrote down a note and, when I did do that, there's 25,000 parcels of land, 13 miles, $1.5 billion worth of property. That's what we know. But in terms of what property taxes are paid, they're working now to figure out what it was just for 2022. I mean, it's a all out effort to make these calculations.
Ask your question again, Glenn.
So can I comment before you do that? I mean, my understanding that the trigger to start the base year estimate was based on when we met our fundraising deadline. Right, so we met our fundraising deadline in June of 2021. 2022, and that's why that's base year calculation for 2022.
If the money had been raised by December 31st, 2021, which was the original goal, then we would have been using 2021 as was in the legislation for that to be the base year, but because it was 2022.
That part I understand, but like the question has been asked and been like, well, can we get a ballpark? Can we get a sense of what this would be, whatever? And so I recognize that they are doing 22 right now, and then 23 will take a year for them to do. Could we have not asked for, well, what was it in 2020 or 2019? To see, based off of what they had in the database at that point, this is what it would have been, or approximately what it would have been in that year, so that we, the community board, has some sort of idea of like, all right, this is the ballpark playing. It may be significantly more, it may be less, but to at least give people an idea. And I just wondered if that was even possible.
It did. I'm saying it's not possible. It did. The calculation that you're asking for didn't exist. So they're focused on making the base year calculation. That is the first year that they're doing the calculation. That's why, I mean, even to get it done in the time period that they're going to get it done in is really impressive. It's a full commitment of Department of Revenue resources that has access to information that citizens do not have access to. They have, rights, if you will, to get to information other normal citizens cannot get to. So that's the issue. It didn't exist. It did not exist before.
Yeah, there wasn't a file where they had that figure in it. They would have had to go on through the same kind of calculation. And then
They did
then
it,
looking in the rear view mirror to figure out which companies existed then that don't.
Right.
It's still been found.
This is just not something they do every year on these. Particularly, you know what I mean? So this is just new work based on what we're doing here.
Now, the other, I think, important factor, a little bit of information that we did get was.
Well, make sure they can hear you.
One additional bit of information that we did get, and kind of dovetails with the concern that we're expressing now, is they are interested in seeing what is the inflation factor, what factors will that be, and what impact is that going to have on the rebate amount. They're very open to going forward if necessary, having some discussions about adjusting that inflation factor so that it can have a favorable impact on what our refund would be. And again, part of the meeting was to talk through all of those kind of rudimentary calculations and processes that they're going through now, to highlight for us where there may be an opportunity to make an adjustment and then to make their own commitment to continue to communicate closely with us so that we can share information regarding stumbling points or areas where more info may be required. But was a very, I think, encouraging visit, and encouraging conversations, everything.
And in that meeting, they actually, I know we're guessing October, November, they actually said November 1st. It's what they're shooting for, to have this figure to us. So.
Chip, do you have anything else to say as far as from a budgetary standpoint?
No. I think that was, you know, the main things about the main thing was that meeting. I mean, again, they're a partner in the partnership, and their commitments there, and it was good to see it, and frankly also to confirm what we suspected would be the timing with all this stuff.
Okay, yeah, Chip, do you have anything to say from a budget standpoint?
He's still working.
Just still working on it. I mean, you know, the TIF is the thing that, you know, that's the big driver of the budget, and we just don't, you know, we don't have anything to really put in there. So we just work towards getting to the finance committee a working draft, I guess, would be the best thing to do coming forward. But
Okay.
it's, yep.
You have anything else you want to update us on?
I think the other thing is that the deposits are earning interest, and that's important. You know, just moving that one account out of the fiscal agent who did their job and helping getting the grant or the funding, if you will, got the structure. They were set up for the purpose of the structure. Now we have an interest-bearing account, and just on that 15+ million, it's meaningful money. So that's important.
Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you for accommodating me on the phone.
Thank you. Now, did everybody see the monthly balance sheet, you know, financials? Income, did anybody have questions on those? If nobody had any questions on those, we do need a motion to accept these. Or the finance committee makes a motion to accept. And then we can take a vote. If there's no question. All in favor to accept?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay, motion. And like I said, next month, I think it'll be after the first month where there'll be some interest income that we'll see that I think will make a difference for us too as we start moving forward.
Yeah, because I think that the transfer took place on the 18th.
Yeah.
There, anything else? I just, before you close out for the financial committee, I would just reiterate the request that was made last month about getting us a budget. Like I hear Chip saying, like everything's dependent upon that, but we are operating without a budget, an approved budget, and I think I heard Laura loud and clear last week. We want to start conducting ourselves in a professional manner. Professional organizations have a budget, so even if it's just salaries and paper flips.
Lyndon, we have a draft. He's out of town and I'm supplying them with a little bit more information. We should have that done next week. There's some additional bones, you know, some meat to put on the bones that we can. So, because they've already provided a draft, but it's, you know, I'm saying, let's work on this and try to put a little bit more on it. Because it's very simple, you know, because we said last month, we would do an accumulation of the expenses, you know, what we've taken in terms of revenue. We have that. I'm going to work with him this week and his team to see if we can add a little bit more and then get that out, to the finance committee, to review, I guess, before coming to the whole board.
And once we get to that, man, we'll get that out.
So yeah, it's not like he's not doing anything on it. So I just wanted to incorporate that information.
Rita, I appreciate you saying
Yeah,
that, and I
thanks.
want to, hey, I was gonna say, I was gonna make sure that, Rita, I appreciate you saying that, and, Rita's done all that we've asked in more than a timely fashion for the information we need. It's just on my end, but, again, just was more focused on getting that tip and seeing where we were. Thank you for that update on that.
Okay, no problem.
But you didn't hear me, just said, really got him a lot of information, and he was more focused on the TIP meeting than he was the budgetary meeting, but that will be forthcoming soon.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so that will take us back to community engagement, sorry.
All good.
Yeah, okay.
What's up, y'all? As you know, community engagement meeting, the meeting over the past, community engagement committee has been meeting over the past couple of months to work through what it could look like to, solicit feedback from the communities from the neighborhood on what their role is for this board and what they would like to see this board do, what they would like to see this board fund. In our most recent community engagement committee meeting, we were joined by Dr. Aaron Rollins, who you might remember from our training on community engagement. And he talked us through a plan, which I believe we can talk about today. So I'm not going to talk too much on the front end, but I will sort of hand over the floor to Dr. Rollins to talk to what we discussed at our past sitting standing.
You can sit or stand, whatever's convenient for you, just so they can.
More
you can-
all
Here you go.
Gabe just said,
Here.
the committee has been working very hard, and at its last meeting, it did vote on a plan. So that, Gabe and, Aaron are going to present that plan to you today. And the idea is after you listen to the details of it, the committee has voted to accept the plan. They're asking you to accept the plan as well. And there's a role in a critical role that each neighborhood representative will play in the plan. Okay. Do you want to?
Absolutely. Would you all like me to stand, sit? It's kind of different.
Go ahead. Yeah.
What you all?
Stand up.
I don't mind. I'm just making it. Teach, so just kind of stop me if I need to. So first, thank you all for having me. Thank you all for having me again. At the conclusion of our workshop, I approached Laura and Rita with a debrief. And we were talking through it, and some of the key points that I won't prolong, some of the key points were, I believe you all need some small victories quickly. I think you all need some small victories very quickly. You need a vision for the partnership. You need some short, medium, and long-term goals and vision statement. First part. The second part, I think, and I was happy to hear you talking about your board development. You need to fulfill the rest of the board. You need to clean not only the board, there's a whole nother board that you all,
The advisory.
part of the bylaws that I remember reading about, that you all, my understanding, they're not even substituted at this point, if I'm correct. I see head nods, yeah. And have an idea about all of these things. Third, this is very important, the board needs to talk on one accord. I said, you all need to be talking on one accord. When you go into the community, into these organizations, you all need to be speaking from the same hymn. And fourth, and leading to the second part, is you need some assistance. I think there's some ways in which you can assist. So the first thing I said, this is what I like to do, and what I proposed to the Community Engagement Committee. So the first thing we need is you all need an elevator speech. And you all come up with as an entire board. I know I see some faces that were not at the initial meeting. I see some that were there, but we need to come together using the bylaws, the TIF, and what have you, and come up with an elevator speech. At the end of that elevator speech, what I'm proposing is we have a little business card with what we are, what we can do, what we can't do. So you keep those, keep them in your wallet and your briefcase. So when your individuals in the community ask you, hey, what are you all doing? What's going on with this? You can actually hand a little business card, hey, here. This is what this is. This is what we are right now. And I think, so I want to come to you and I want to help you all
work together as a group, come up with what we are in our elevator speech, what our elevator speech is as a board. That's the first part. The second part, where you all really come in hand, I want to create or propose. I said 9 initially proposed to the community engagement committee, and I changed it to 10. 10 different individual meetings with each individual community. 10 different meetings. And in these meetings, what we'll do is we'll have 4 key components. The first part is where we've been. So I have individuals, what's his name? Brown, J. Michael Brown. During our previous, the second day of the workshop, and during lunch, midway through the meeting, Mr. Brown was talking about just giving an impromptu history of where the board had been. And he was telling all the different steps. We used to do this and we did this and here and there. And I was just thinking, this is good stuff. This is powerful. The community needs to hear this. I mean, whether it's good, bad, they just need to hear. We have been doing some things. We have been doing some stuff. So I was thinking he'll be an outstanding person, probably someone else. I want 2 people for every one of these parts of the workshop. So I think you're an outstanding person for that, and along with someone else who's been around, especially someone from the beginning, to talk about where we've been, 15 minutes or so, at each of these 9 individual workshops. Secondly, where are we now? So this is the part I need you all to do. So the community member for each, and I'll use, was it Chickasaw? Park Duval, I'm gonna get it wrong. Park Duval, maybe he's on the committee. So Park Duval. So the community member, along with the community engagement community member, will stand up there and explain where we are now. We talk about the workshops, all the various new initiatives that you all have voted on, and things of that nature. This is where we are now. Here's the key part to this part. I want you all, prior to these individual meetings, to vote on a number. I'll use 100,000 for an example. You all come up with that number. And when we finish these meetings, you say, I promise you all to the community, this is what's going to separate the board, this partnership from other individuals. Starting fiscal year 2024, July 1st of 2024, we will start spending this much money. We're going to promise you all in these neighborhoods, we're going to spend $100,000, not each individual one, but we're committed to spending this. And when we come back to you all next year, we will spend this $100,000. I'm going to show you all that you're going to help us spend this $100,000. I'm making the number up hypothetically. We all got to get your budget, come up with the actual number. So the community member will make the announcement along with the community engagement member, talking about where we are now. And then the next part, third and fourth, is what we can and cannot do. Of course, individuals think that you all can solve the world, you all can pay the water bill, the light bill, the gas bill, there's some things you can and cannot do. So you have to, follow up with, hey, we're going to spend this much money. The third part is, this is what we can and cannot do. What we, we're just obligated to do, and what we cannot do, something by law and statute. And then the fourth part is where I'll come in and I'll lead a facilitated discussion. It will be me. It won't be the individuals fussing. It will be very structured. And I just, in my mind, envision like a structured SWOT analysis, where I would talk to community members, we have specific questions, we're gonna allow them to talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, threats. And we'll go through with facilitated questions where they get to talk and share their viewpoints. The individuals are allowed to talk and not overrun the room. And you have a person, not one of you all, but actually an outsider doing this, and we'll be gathering feedback. So every one of these meetings, we'll be recording, getting their feedback, hearing from them. And this does a few things. One is the 9 different, well, now 10, and then the 10th one is the one for individuals who couldn't make their specific neighborhood association, because only members from the individual neighborhoods will be allowed to attend these meetings, these in-person meetings. And I'll need you all to help us figure out Park Duval, where's the best place to meet in Park Duval? And what's the best time? Because it may not be a Friday night, may not be good for Park Duval. They may care about football, So we're gonna find the best time in each individual neighborhood, best place for each individual neighborhood. And in the 10th one, I was thinking probably campus, more on campus. We just do one, but if you couldn't make your individual meeting, you can come to the general meeting before we come back and report to you all. And this will last from now through the first quarter of the year. We'll come back at the 10th, after the 10th meeting with a report. Here are the numbers, here are the responses. This is what they want. This is what the community is saying they want to do with this number. The community now knows, singing from one accord, because we all done our elevator speech together. And then the community members will know what we can and cannot do, and we're going to be committed to doing exactly what we promised them we're going to do. To actually spend a small amount. And this is a small victory. And then you take this to catapult some of your larger projects and some of your more substantial projects moving forward. So that's a quick version of it. I'm more than happy to elaborate on any more of it or any specific details, but I think we kind of went through like an hour and a half or so the other night, and I was grilled by Michael and, so we were creative, we kind of went through some of the points, but I'm more than happy to call with the stuff or, take any questions, and I can't see behind me, so you have to tell me somebody behind me. Any questions on?
What's the name of your organization? I missed that.
Olive Branch Coach. So I don't know if the other, I'm professor, department chair, and also on a mediation consultant.
I remember he was the person who helped us with the workshops, the training, the last training. It's one of the trainers.
I don't think I heard. I think it's worth 5 minutes in those meetings, perhaps, to at least articulate the source of funding. I'm all of it, because you know, my short duration in time with this organization and just in some other community meetings, there seems to be this impression that there's just this huge big pot of money that's going to be never ending here. And I think it's real important to understand where the money's coming from and how it's actually taking away from what would have been in other sources. And that's because of the trust in the community residents and in this board to find the best way to spend those monies compared to how they used to be spent. And I think at least some way articulating that is really important, because it's not as if people have said, well, here's just a pot of money that we'll give. This is people who have said, our budgets normally used to rely on these funds. We believe this is a better way of dispersing and putting the funds, and I just think a few minutes explaining that would be helpful.
I think that's outstanding, and you'll be in there all the 10 meetings in there with me.
Last one, Jay Michael so articulate.
But I think that's outstanding, and I want to say the same thing, all 10 neighborhoods, all 9 neighborhoods, keep the same messaging. Have individuals from the various neighborhoods helping us, serving as an advocate, so that they know that we are here genuinely trying to do the work that they're entrusting us to do with these resources. Any other?
I'll say, I do think that there needs to be some sort of a digital aspect to this that allows people to engage, whether it be, online survey that we can disperse, via social media or emails, or, and then, yeah, just some other way to get it, because relying on people to show up at these meetings, I mean, we do all publicity in the world. You're not going to be able to get, a significant number of people when you consider how many folks live in these neighborhoods. So I think we need to have multiple ways to reach out, if possible.
Absolutely, and we were discussing that, and one of the things we, said, we want to really have this 10th one, so that those individuals who start hearing, hey, they've agreed to spend this money, they've agreed to spend as much. That's why we came up with the 10th one. We said, we're gonna do this 10th one, or just in case you couldn't make your first one, we're gonna have a 10th one where anyone in those affected communities can come in. But I'm with you, we're not discounting, and the university uses the website as a message board. I'm not great. To hear feedback, because as we like pointed out, some people just aren't comfortable talking in public, and want to share their thoughts and concerns, and they're nervous to say it in front of a microphone in front of people that they don't know. So I'm with you. Sure. I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to echo what you said, because I said the exact same thing in our meeting. I think one of the things we talked through was how best to make sure that we can prioritize the voices of the residents and exclude outside noise without requesting too much information in the survey that would be prohibited. So where do you live? What's your zip code? What's your, like, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And so we did talk about how to walk that tightrope, sure.
That's, the committee did express a great deal of concern about it. And we said very frankly that the intent of the meetings was to hear back from the residents themselves, and other voices were immaterial. So part of the online feedback is going to have some authentication. If someone is saying, this is what we need to do in Russell, then that's feedback we want from people that live in Russell rather than folks that live in the Highlands. So part of the challenge, if you do online, is to make sure that the responses are from the folks in the neighborhoods that we're targeting.
The question of this, I'm directing this to the committee to them.
Gina, speak up, make sure they can hear you, because remember, we don't have a mic.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just, yeah.
Okay.
I was doing for this.
Yes, yeah.
For example, tonight when we adopted changes to our appointment process, I feel really good and appreciative that we have the intent in writing so that we're all clear on exactly what changes we just put into effect. So it's from in that spirit that I'm asking if we are to vote to approve a community engagement plan tonight, do we have that engagement plan in writing? Along with, I guess, things that have been mentioned or touched about the process, the goals, objectives, how's that to play out, who's to do the work, and at what cost that'll happen?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Dr. Rollins has done a proposal himself that the committee did review in its deliberation. The cost for his involvement is $6,000, which seems minuscule, but that's not the critical factor, because remember at the last board meeting, the board voted for $50,000 threshold, but his price, just so you know what it is $6,000, which is beyond modest.
Yeah.
He did have a proposal that he distributed to the committee, which included each of the items that he has discussed here, the pre-meetings, the elevator speech, the whole thing, and they considered that written out, that narrative when they had their meeting and then decided to come forward with a recommendation. So he's saying that
Board, we're not privy to see the actual plan
but we did,
before we vote on it? That's what I'm asking.
okay, we can see.
I mean, if we're voting tonight, I assume that's because it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, will there be, can there be,
Yes.
should there be a written proposal before us as,
There is a written proposal.
before
Committee
each?
has seen it, and pardon us for not bringing it in here, but we can make copies of. So you.
Yeah, I'll send it out to who wants it? Eugenia, whoever.
Can you take it?
Does everybody like to have it?
Take it on electronic device.
Yeah, I'll send it out, send it to the board.
Thank you, Dan, for that. I think as it pertains to community engagement, there's a lot of comms overlap as it pertains to that. So I like to make sure that from a comms perspective, we stay, aligned in terms of what the communication may be. I know you mentioned like mission, vision, goals.
Yes.
And that's very important, but I think that we need to make sure that we are aligned in terms of what that outreach should be. This is what you do on a regular basis, so I won't get into the details of that, but just to make sure that there is alignment from that perspective, because that's what will be on the website, for example. Those are things that we should all be saying from one accord, so just to make sure that, from a marketing perspective, that it's inclusive in that way. I don't foresee that it would not be, but I would just ask that we be made privy to that before it comes from a vote perspective. And also to amplify the work that you're doing, I would ask that the board consider putting marketing support behind it so that assets and those types of things can be created to appropriately communicate that. And I don't know, Dr. Rollins, if that is incorporated into your proposal of creating those assets, but that's where, to me, we should make sure that we're working together on that so that the community engagement committee is most effective in that, but that may require some incremental marketing funds to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
My agency has done several design assets like business cards and those things. So we can develop those things once we finalize on that. The only thing we don't personally cover are hard costs. So if it's something like printing and things like that, we wouldn't cover that. But in terms of other design assets, we're donating our time to each one. So I don't want to jump in your bandwagon. I just want to work to support what all you all are doing from that perspective to make sure that it gets the attention that it
And I welcome that. Thank you. I think it was Dr. Your thing is backwards. Thank you, Dr. Wade. Dr. Wade, yeah, Dr. Wade. We welcome that, and I completely agree with you. We need to speak from one accord, and that's why I want the board to come together and create these talking points as a board, as opposed to me giving them to you all. And what I think it's better if we come together so that when we go into our various communities, we can say, this is where we are, because we came together on this collectively, and then stimulate it accordingly and inform on the website and then business cards and all of your marketing material.
And
Completely agree.
the committee did say that they thought it would be important to work with the communications committee on messaging and things of that sort, because there was an overlap there. Some conversations around how to best go about and how to be involved communication so that things are consistent and that they make sense.
And I don't know, the committees, chose, they also said that they want the other financial committee, I think it's your committee, to come up and help us with the other numbers that would represent the hypothetical. That they want your help, so when it's a collective, endeavor here. That we need all hands on deck here. Any other questions for me? I don't see any in the chat. Over.
So the committee itself voted to adopt the plan, but it sounded like the body is saying they want some additional information. So we can put together some information that we can share with the board after we leave today. We don't have to wait until next month for you to get it. And then we'll have a discussion again. It may be after looking at the proposal, thinking more about what was said today. You may have some suggestions for how it can all be fine-tuned even more. But remember, what's going to happen ultimately at each of the settings is that Dr. Rollins is going to be a facilitator to lead the audience in kind of a SWOT analysis to help them work their way through a discussion together.
So, anything else? I appreciate everybody's feedback, it's really useful. Yeah, a little quiet, feedback next one.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns before we move on? No? Okay. So that brings us now to old business, because we already did financials. And old business.
Let me say just one matter of old business. Remember at last month's meeting, we talked about our partnership with L Homes, and I had forecasted for you that I thought we would be able to come to the meeting today with a finished contract for you to review. We are still in the middle of our discussions. It's taking a little longer than we thought, but that does not mean there's not a spirit of cooperation and that we're all on the same page. It's just taking a little bit longer. So anticipate getting that information at the next meeting.
At the next meeting or sometime before that, you think it'll take that long?
Well, the difficulty is that it will take the finance board will see it, but it's gonna take the full board to authorize entering into the agreement.
For purposes of the minutes, going back to your committee, the vote, is it being tabled or is it being postponed?
I didn't realize it takes about postponed, postponed.
Okay.
And now to new business. Any new business?
I like the word new. I would like if everyone would indulge us. To bring up just some issues. Excuse me, I wouldn't even call it issues. I wanted to simply share with you things that we do at the Cabinet for Economic Development. And candidly, where this organization is and some of the tools that this organization will have at its disposal and how that kind of fits in with economic development. And because Jeff is also in economic development, it's a requirement if you're gonna do economic development to be named Jeff. I thought I might pull him in a little bit. And we're not looking for anything, but we really just want to be very transparent and talk about what we do. You know, our role is to work with companies that are looking to locate somewhere. And typically it's from out of state. So we have companies that will come in, and oftentimes they come in and say, we've narrowed down to 3 states and we'd like to look at a location in one of those 3 states. What can you do to offer incentives for us to come to Kentucky versus somewhere else? And oh, by the way, what are your locations and what things do you have to offer? Now, statutorily at the state level, I think Jeff, even at the local level, the tools that are typically used to provide an incentive to a company are those property tax abatements or the abatements of the wages. And I don't really mean about abatement, but wages that are created and the income taxes that are normally paid to the state and an occupational tax paid to the local community and property taxes on the equipment and things. Those can be abated or reduced or refunded to a company in an incentive. But what is happening with WEOP, which is what I get excited about, is
Partnership.
I'm sorry. No,
That's okay.
I'm still learning.
I know it.
So with the partnership, the greatest thing is you have and you will have, once that baseline is set, those incrementals after the rate of inflation will all come into this partnership board for you all to decide how to spend. I don't get a vote, and that's exactly the way it should be. But typically, if we had a company, we would write an incentive where those taxes would again be either abated or refunded, and we would write a criteria about number of jobs, making sure they're created, making sure that at a certain wage level, we always require benefits and things of that nature. We no longer have those tools. And we're not asking for those tools to come our way. We're just not. But we want to make you aware that we still have companies that come through from time to time. They want to employ people. They want to bring in new jobs that aren't currently here in some part of Kentucky. They want to bring them in. And we want, and we have been saying, you know, there is an area that I think is one of the most unique in the country. Would you take a look at it? Because think about being part of rebirthing and helping to grow an area of our community. You should want to consider doing that as a great company. And we've had some companies that have been interested, and we continue to talk with them and work with them. And what we have decided to do at the cabinet level is, again, we're not asking for any of those tools, but we are trying to find, and we have found ways with funds that we have at our disposal that don't come from incremental taxes. They actually are appropriated to us by the General Assembly. We have offered those as the incentive so that we don't have any impact on what would be the formula of the benefits coming your way. And let's say we got one of those companies, and all this is hypothetical. But if we got one of those companies and we use those other tools, that would mean that that would help raise the level of revenue coming into this organization. Here's our challenge, and here's how, and the reason we wanted to come to the world. We have some of those companies. Typically, companies like to come in and be somewhat confidential and want to get everything committed before they come in to start meeting, and they definitely don't like it to go public because their competitors find out. And that's one of the reasons why it's always a requirement to keep things confidential when you're working with a company. Again, hypothetical, but we have met with several companies and we have said, look, here's how the partnership board works. While we can offer you some benefits that are really good and we think you should come to Kentucky, we'd also like for you to commit that if you choose to locate in a location in the partnership board area, that you will meet with the partnership board, agree to have community employment sessions, agree to work with the community on things that might be good in giving back to the community, and listen to the residents. There may be things that you're finding that you are willing to do because you're going to be part of the community. We want you to be part of the partnership board community. And we've had a couple of companies that have said, yeah, that's intriguing. We'd like to do that. Let's keep moving forward and evaluating the area. The other thing that we have done is in some of these tools that we are offering, again, none of those that fall into those drivers of the revenue in the TIF, we have suggested to them that our level of support goes up if they hire more people from the partnership neighborhoods, to add another benefit and incentive to work with the partnership board to hire the residents that live in that area. Don't know if any of that will work, but sometimes we might find an opportunity that will move fairly quickly. And I just wanted to share that with you because we'd like to, at a moment's notice, because that's just the way it works. Is we love to, at a moment's notice, be able to say, can we call a meeting? And I know it has to be public and will be public, but allow us to introduce the company and talk about it. And then shortly thereafter, if you agree, allow it to be potentially announced. Because that's the speed by which these things work. But the worst thing that Jeff and I talked about was if we get an opportunity and a company says they want to move in the neighborhood and they're willing to take these tools that aren't the normal traditional economic development tools. And if they agree to the guidelines we put out, which is to work with the partnership board again, and to actually actively work with the neighborhood, we felt like those are opportunities you don't want to pass up. And yet, if we had one of those opportunities hypothetically, and we hadn't come to you and said, is that okay? Is that how you want us to continue to operate? Again, and I think the comment about getting this in writing, shame on me, we should bring back at the next meeting, all of this in writing. We're committing to not use the tools that are driving any of the benefits for the TIF. And candidly, if these companies want to come in and reach an agreement with the property owner, I think that's within their right to do. We simply want to use our tools that are limited to really make sure that they consider the partnership neighborhoods, because I just think it'd be a wonderful opportunity to bring new employees and new companies into the area to help lift up the revenue stream, but also get them involved early. But also understand trust has to be built. Lots of concerns and issues in the communities. I get all that. I spent 28 years dealing with these issues myself, and you have to work every day to earn trust. You have to work twice as hard to keep it. Don't want to do something that becomes a surprise. But at the same time, Jeff and I have these opportunities every now and then. We don't want to simply pass them up. So I just wanted to share it. It's information, get some feedback. And I can write all this up and would happily do that. But I also think it's important that you know that those tools that are now the ones we used to use, we won't and can't use them without your all's approval, and we're not. But we're still trying to bring jobs into the neighborhood. So that's really all I wanted to do, is a bit of an update. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
Michael, yes, sir. We do have a mic.
well, yeah.
Michael, go ahead.
Right.
So, I mean, I think bringing in new businesses, our agreement with the city excludes us from moving businesses elsewhere in the county. So they need to be out of state or out of county. And I think that's the best way to grow the tax base for the TIF, without creating, or creating less gentrification possibilities. But I think the traditional incentive system where you're giving the company gets to keep the withholdings as part of the incentives, that is basically shooting the TIF in the foot, right?
Well, I won't call it shooting the TIF in the foot, but two things. One, we at our level, we never deal with a company looking to move from one position of the state to the other, or from moving from one portion of the county into another neighborhood. Ours is all accretive relative to either a new company, new startup, or a company coming in from out of state. So that's the only types of companies that we are working with. Secondly, as it relates to the incentive, it's more technical. Those wage assessments don't get kept and retained by the company. There's actually a process where those wages are paid, taxes go to revenue, and then we work with revenue in terms of a refund based upon certain criteria that the company has made the investments, are paying the wages that they said they were going to, are providing the benefits that they said they were going to. So that's the way we create governance, that these companies do the things that they say they're going to need to do, which is again why the companies we're working with, Mike, to your point, we're not using any of those tax credits or tools, because to your point, that should flow into your all's purview for you all to decide how to use. So we're not using tax abatements or credits.
How long are those incentives typically?
What'd you say, Mike?
How long do those incentives last typically on, most projects? Is there a, average?
Yeah, there's an average, probably 12 to 15 years, sometimes longer. But 12 to 15 years is typically, the average. And keep in mind, again, I'm more in the weeds than I should be. That includes the ramp up period. So typically most companies take 0 to 4 years, 5 years to get to their full employment. That's part of that 15-year window that they have.
Okay.
And we're not offering any tax credits or any tax abatements even after they announce. We're taking care of all of that with other tools that we have tried to cobble together to still encourage them to make the location. And hey, look, they may still choose not to choose Kentucky, Louisville, and the partnership board neighborhoods. But we're doing everything we can because we just think it's what is our job and we think it'd be a good thing.
As a board member, I welcome these discussions, and I'd also, if I were, looking to move my business here, in certain ways, the taking those incentives off the table may slant something, in a different direction. So I think we may need to look at, what other tools you guys have to offer and making sure that, we're presenting an even playing field to anybody that's looking to our area. So, I endorse these discussions, I guess.
And one comment on that, our vision all along with the cabinet, and I think Jeff, you would agree, as this organization continues to ramp up and build the tools and the processes and gets to the point that you all will need to look at, are there opportunities that you could provide if you wanted to with those companies, but it would be your choice. And then we would work together in terms of how that's facilitated. That's exactly what I view as one of the purposes behind the creation of the partnership board. But that's also why we felt we needed to come in and talk to you about, do we just stop? Do we not do something? Or do we keep trying to work with these companies in a way where, like I say, we're not using the tools of the partnership board? So Mike, thank you.
Monique has her hand up.
Yes, I just want to say how much I appreciate, and please pardon my video feed. I'm calling in from a very rural area. Please pardon me. But I really appreciate your questions, Michael. And I think it brings up a really good point from Secretary Knoll and Jeff O'Brien. We offer education in this. This does not come natural. Coming from a university environment where I get to deal in molecules and then going into economic development, I learn something new every day. But these are the actual tools that the cabinet has used to achieve the first and second best years in economic development in the Commonwealth's history. All optional, right? But having these tools is not common knowledge and not easy to get a hold of. I know I've seen sometimes to Laura and Rita some education courses and things on tax credits and how they work, and I'm still learning. One of the best things I learned from Secretary Knoll that I've heard you guys talk about in the past is there is a difference between things being there and things being of quality, right? So jobs are coming into the neighborhood regardless at this point. But at this point, we want quality jobs. Jobs that pay good wages, jobs that take care of families, jobs that pay good benefits, that are good corporate citizens. These tools are a good way to achieve those good quality jobs in these neighborhoods. And so I offer that education, and Christina Slattery is our Commissioner for Business Development. I know she would be happy to offer that education as well.
And Katie Smith, who was our Deputy Secretary, is a whiz. And to Monique's point, I'll give you one data fact. Last year, and this includes the entire state of Kentucky, the average wage of the projects that we incentivized was almost $27 an hour before benefits. They have to have benefits, but it's $27 an hour before benefits, based upon a 2,200 hour week. So it's $56,000 average wage is what was our average last year across the state based upon what we incentivized. And that included a couple of companies that we worked with that have really great programs for single moms, single head of households. Their wages weren't quite as high, but we felt we needed those kinds of jobs in Kentucky. So to Monique's point, we truly try to work with companies that are adding what I call accretive wage benefits and accretive benefits as an offering to the community, to the resident.
Curious if you've ever, I guess, implemented some form of a community benefits agreement with any of the incentives, and I guess I would support sort of in laying out the scenario you did about the partnership providing some motivation for companies But there would be the expectation of, implementing benefits that accrue directly to the community. So I'm wondering, does that ever come up, or do you utilize that type of instrument?
I've used the community benefits agreement on TIF districts, physical development projects, in terms of defining what is the role of the company, what's the role, at that point, usually the taxing entity, and then what's in for the community. And a lot of times it's everything from, I've never seen where we will definitely only hire so many percentage from neighborhoods. But our goal is to be this. Here's how we're going to get there. And then community residents offer to come to the job fair to do things. So yes, a community benefits agreement can be written. And I would envision that as this process moves along, and candidly, where we are in that curve as an organization is where you would expect us to be. But as we continue to move down the line, I would envision that workshops that we would have together would be held to help write what would be a typical community benefit agreement. What would you be looking to do? And honestly, I would say things like using some of your funds for workforce training initiatives, or maybe even serving and creating an entity in which there's probably a board from the community. Whereas you look, and there may be some residents that have transportation issues. There may be residents that have some credit issues. And this is something that I worked on at World. We actually worked with a community that helped solve those issues, but we only did it with the community. That was a community benefit agreement that we signed. And we agreed to provide jobs, training, and the community agreed to provide support and help them find that workforce. I think all those kind of things are not only possible, but should be, and they will come at the right time, I think, through this process. Yes, sir.
I just kind of along those lines, and I think this is probably more so for us as board members, that I think it is important for, you said, when you all bringing companies in, wanting them to work with the partnership, I think it's important that we define what it means to work with the partnership, right? Really being able to articulate for community and those we serve, kind of what gets somebody to the table and how we then evaluate, even whether we bring those folks in, or how we are going to, if we decide to endorse the companies coming in and whatnot. Because while there are the benefits that you all have talked about, in terms of jobs and workforce, there are also other considerations that I think have to be taken into play. And I think about, like right now, before council is this anti-displacement policy that is being discussed. And that is going to be something that applies to businesses just as much as it does to any residential development. And so if we're going to put our stamp on something, or even if we're going to just lend our voice to a particular project or development, I think we have to plan to be able to assess whether or not this is good for our community, whether or not, whether that has to do with how it impacts housing, in addition to jobs, in addition to transportation, but also environmental issues. All of those sorts of things become critical considerations, I think, when we're talking about developments moving into any of the 9 neighborhoods. And so some of that could go into with the benefits agreement, or benefits agreement, or there may be other ways for us to do it. But I think that this conversation, and I appreciate you all bringing it, is instructive for the board, that we probably need to outline what that looks like from our end. So it's not you just coming up and saying like, hey, we got a company this week, and us on the fly figuring out like, okay, well, yeah, let's do this, and essentially rubber stamping something that may or may not be, what the community wants, right? Without us being able to vet it or assess it in some way. And so hopefully at some point soon, we as a board can figure out what that means when you say the company working with the partnership. How do we define that? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for those that we serve?
I think it's a great suggestion. I think Jeff and I would welcome, we'd even be glad to try to work with you. And I think we also thought bringing this up might be a good impetus to help us come together and start putting that information.
And I'll just echo it. That's out there. We are getting approached by companies. I mean, we've got lots of opportunities that are available in the West End, as you all know. And so I think that it would be very helpful for both the city and the state, as we're working with these companies, to understand what are critical threshold issues for the board. When we talk to these companies, like, if you want to move on this property and you're going to ask something of the partnership or of the government, these are the basics, this is the baseline, this is how we're going to do business here. I mean, just like the cabinet, the state cabinet, the city has, you don't get a city incentive, a city, income tax or occupational tax incentive.
Like the connection went out.
I will text Rita and tell her.
Jennifer, it looks like I have host, and so as soon as the board pops up, I'll admit them in.
Thanks, Monique. It looks like their battery died on the laptop, so they're getting logged back on right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, we have visual back for boardroom and just waiting on unmute for boardroom.
Financial agreement, or we could do something like that so that everybody's participating.
Thank you, we're back.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much for sharing.
Any other new business? And now we are at our point where we have our public comment. So, at this time, if we have participants in the room that would like to make a comment or online, you have time for 5 participants at 3 minutes each. Anyone?
Okay, let's see. We have one attendee and that person hand is not up, so we don't have any participants online.
$18. So, now we have, open board discussion. It looks like, we have one item reflecting bylaws. Mr. Linden.
Sure, so I asked for this, just based off of conversation we had on our retreat, some subsequent conversation.
Linda, do you mind coming up here? Please, so that they can hear you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was a request of mine just because of, at the board, at the retreat we had. And then in, some of our subsequent board meetings. It seemed to me, at least, that not everyone on the board was aware of our bylaws, like we didn't mention it at all. during our board retreat. That didn't come up at all. And then additionally, we've had conversations here about different things. For instance, and then a good example and why I wanted to start with this one was around committees. I think at one point there was a recommendation made to form a particular committee. And, we kind of seemed to go around about like how that was going to happen, but the bylaws are pretty clear about how we do that. So I wanted to be able to, just make sure that everybody's aware of the bylaws, that everybody sees them, that we're all aware of what they state, how they work. But also to just raise this as an opportunity to say, hey, we have guidance on how these things should take place, right? Like we don't have to make these things up or guess or anything like that. We can actually refer back to these things. And there may be places where some things are unclear, right? Like, and that is, I think, a cue to us to say, all right, we need to tighten these up. Maybe we need to change the bylaws and amend them in some way so that these things are clear. And so I just brought that up so that, my fellow board members, if anybody had questions or concerns, that we could discuss openly. It wasn't for a particular item, at least not today, that I wanted to bring up or recommend, but I just wanted to make sure that it was something that was presented and that we were all on the same page. So thank you, Rita, for sharing those out electronically again and make sure that everybody had them. But that was just a concern for me, to make sure we all had a starting point to operate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Man,
Yeah.
have a comment, this is a practical matter. For example, today, I believe we just amended our bylaws in this way. And so I would expect, I guess over the course of the next week or 2 or months, that we'll be getting an updated set of bylaws that reflect the date of this amendment.
That
And
would,
you shaking your head.
that was my plan to incorporate the new bylaw amended and indicate, just like you would see a statute, that it was amended X date for circulation to the board, so you all have the most updated version.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, that brings us to the 2023 board meeting dates. As you can see here, our next board meeting is scheduled for October 23rd. Comments? We go, Ms. Rita? Will we be here for the?
October, yes, and I'll have to double check with regard to
November and December. Okay.
Well, December is Christmas Day. We didn't have a board meeting last December. I doubt if we'll have a board meeting in December, but November, at least in October, November. I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And at that point, we are now adjourned. Thank you so very much, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
What is the actual time?
Yes, it's hard.
One time.
Okay. Thank you.
So, all right. All the people, oh yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Mike. Bye.